Hi everybody, welcome back to Mando Lessons. This is lesson 2 in a series I'm doing on 2-string, 2 or less finger chords. So I've been using the G and D strings. The first lesson I talked about the key of D and went over a little bit of why I play 2-string chords a lot of the time. So if you haven't watched that one, check that one out. It really is a good introduction to not only how to play in the key of D, but also a lot of kind of my thoughts behind why using 2 strings and simplified chords is a good thing to do sometimes. In this lesson, I'm going to be talking about the key of G. So, you might remember from our last lesson that our sort of most simple G chord is just an open G string and an open D string. No finger chord. And then a C chord, I guess your kind of simplified one finger C chord is going to be 2nd fret on your D string, which is an E. So now I've got G open and E 2nd fret on the D string. And then your D chord is going to be 2nd fret on the G string, excuse me, and open D string. And now if we were doing Man of Constant Sorrow in the last lesson, we can do that again here. I am a man of constant sorrow. I've seen trouble all my days. I bid farewell to old Kentucky, place where I was born and raised. So those were all either no finger or 1 finger chords. And now let's kind of move on to some other ones. Another G chord that we came across in the last lesson. This chord I don't actually tend to use a whole lot. As, you know, if I'm in the key of G, I rarely will use this as sort of my first chord. 4 and open. So it's a B and a D, and I think that's part of why I don't use it, is there's actually not a G in this G chord. And if G is your key, using a chord without the root in it can be a little less grounded than this. It's got a G in the bass. Or another chord we'll come up to later will also have a G in it that sounds a little more grounded. But I think this is a great chord, but I tend to use that chord more in the key of D as a G chord, because a G chord in the key of D, the 4 chord, is a less grounded chord. So a less kind of grounded voicing isn't going to disrupt things that much. But it is an option. You could still sing, I am a man and a constant sorrow. I've seen trouble all my days. But you might even hear when I'm singing that, something about that B in the bass and the D that really doesn't lend itself towards really giving you a nice foundation for your song. But it's an option. Moving on up. Sometimes what I'll do is use this C natural and open D as a C chord. Now a C chord doesn't actually have a D in it, but in the context, if you're maybe saying, if you are, for example, using that 4 and open as your G for Man of Constant Sorrow, I am a man of constant sorrow. I see trouble all my days. It can work in the context of the tune, because it really wants to pull back down to that C, B, C, B. So if it really wants to pull a little moment of dissonance with that C, natural, and D, 5th fret on the G and open D string, that's not gonna, it'll just be a passing chord, and that dissonance won't disrupt things too badly. Another chord that I just used there was another D chord, which we came to in the first lesson. Open D string and 7th fret on the G. I should do that the other way. 7th on the G and open D. They're both Ds. It's great. They're really kind of simple, sparse D chords. I've seen trouble all my days. You can also walk this scale. We talked about a little bit about walking through the scale. You know, we're using all the notes of the G chord with a droned D string. We talked about that in the first lesson, the key of D lesson a little bit too. And none of those are going to sound bad. Just a nice drony accompaniment. So we have this C chord. This is another great G chord. I use this one a lot. Open G string and 5th fret on the D. They're both G's, very focused, very sparse. I am a man of constant sorrow. I see trouble all my days. And I'm also using this D chord. This is a really kind of crunchy one. A G, which isn't in a D chord, it would be an A, and then F sharp on your D string, which is the 3rd of a D chord. And again, you know, it's pretty crunchy out of context, but in context, I've seen trouble all my days. I am a man that's opening 5, constant sorrow, opening 2. I've seen trouble all my days. That's opening 4 to opening 5. Definitely a crunchier, more out there option, but give it a shot. If it's just a passing chord, it can be a nice little dissonant moment that brings you back into the consonants of that very sparse G chord. All right, so let's start getting into 2-finger chords. Those are all of our 1-finger chords. As with the D lesson, I'll have a PDF with all of these chord shapes on my website under this lesson, so you can review them. I'll have it all lined out so you can see these shapes. All right, so let's see. Here's a great G chord, 4th fret on the G string, 5th on the D string. Came to that one in the D lesson. We also came to this D chord, 2nd fret on the G string, 4th fret on the D string. So I've seen troubles all my days. You can add this C chord, 5th fret on the G string, 2nd fret on the D string. So let's use those 3 chords in conjunction. We have 4 and 5 as our G, 5 and 2 as our C, and 2 and 4 as our D chord. Or 1, 4, 5, 1. I am a man in constant sorrow. I've seen trouble all my days. I bid farewell to old Kentucky. What is the next word? The place where I was born and raised. Forgot the words there after singing this song over and over. I also use this D chord. I bid farewell to old Kentucky. You can slide that. That's up 2 frets. 5 and 2 is a C chord. To 7 and 4 is a D chord. Kentucky, the place that I was born and raised. 4 and 5. Or you could end on 7 and 5. So really, what I'm trying to get you to do here is, you know, use a lot of these chords. It's really overwhelming if I was trying to give you all these options on all 4 strings, and it would make a lot more sound, which is going to take up a lot more of the sonic space. But by using 2 strings and finding a bunch of different chords, and I think thinking more within the key can be helpful. Like I said, this G chord is a great G chord in the key of D, but it's less of a kind of grounded G chord if it's your first chord in your song, because there is no G. It's just a little more floaty, if you want to use that word. But so really kind of thinking in context, thinking in voicings, thinking in how you're stacking up your chords and how the sound of those chords work together to create kind of a cohesive sound, rather than jumping all over the fretboard or having a really high chord and a really low chord. Finding ones that work well together, that get a little bit of movement, like I am a man of constant sorrow, doing little bass runs like that. Man of constant sorrow, man of constant sorrow. And then you right into that C chord. I am a man of constant sorrow. I see trouble all my days. And really, by limiting yourself to 2 strings, you're giving yourself more brain space to kind of think about the quality of your chords, and rather than just kind of jumping excuse me, rather than just jumping into your kind of go-to chord chop shapes, which are totally great and they serve a purpose by all means, but if you're looking to kind of simplify your chords, and then it kind of gives you the space to do more interesting things as you run kind of between your chords. You can use little bass runs. You can do any number of things that'll kind of spice it up, at the same time as leaving more space for the guitar or for the fiddle or the bass, or rather than trying to fill all the space with your mandolin, which is help. Maybe if you're just playing solo or with one other person, trying to fill up that space a little more is a totally valid thing to do. But like in bluegrass, the mandolin has that it's a very kind of confined role of playing chop chords. So you're just, you're confining the role of the mandolin in your ensemble to take up a certain kind of sonic space. So that's, I think, all of the chords that I can think of at the moment in the key of G. But again, if you can find some more, if you know how to find the 1, 3, and 5 that are needed to use to make up a chord, do that. Find it for these chords I've been talking about, G, C, and D, and then find your 1, 4, and 5 chords. Find nice ways to get between them. If you're interested in learning more about 1, 4, and 5 chords, or how to build a chord using the 1, 3, and 5 of the scale, if all of that sounds kind of crazy, confusing information, I do have lessons on that in the techniques and fundamental section of mandolessons.com. I try to lay it out starting from no theory needed, and it can really be helpful in this sort of context of building chords out from just 2 strings and finding nice voicings. So I hope that's been helpful. Again, lots more lessons at mandolessons.com, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.